Mo True Crime. I am your host, Anne Marie, and I love true crime.
I am your co-host, Mark, and I hate true crime.
We'll discuss old and new, solved and unsolved Missouri true crime cases.
And sometimes we'll take a road trip or fly around the world to bring you a mystery from other parts of the world.
You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter at Mo True Crime. Please like us and share with your friends.
This podcast is not suitable for children. Please use caution when listening around others as the subject matter can be upsetting.
All right, we are finally back.
Yeah, it's been a while.
It has. Busy summer. We are back and we are talking about Herb Baumeister. He was born on April 7th, 1947. For some reason, they called him the I-70 killer, but he's also called the gay murderer. He is a lesser-known serial killer, in my opinion. I didn't actually know about him until maybe a year ago. And I can't even remember how I found out about him, but it was actually his property that he was living at the time this all kind of went down, called Fox Hollow Farm. I think I was looking at haunted properties or something like that and had never heard of him and started to look into it. This is a very high level of the case, and one of the things doing research for any of these cases that is extremely difficult for me is there's not a whole lot about the victims. So unfortunately, I just know very little about the victims, their name, their age, where they were last seen, or there is a documentary out there. My buddy, what's his name?
Mark?
Bill Curtis.
Oh.
You're Mark.
I'm
Bill
not
Curtis.
Your buddy? I'm not your buddy?
Yeah, you are, but I'm not talking about, I was talking about a documentary. But anyway, I think it's investigative reports with Bill Curtis, and he narrates a documentary about him, and it's called The Secret Life of a Serial Killer. I could only find a really bad version. Actually, there's two on YouTube. They're really horrible versions, very fuzzy and grainy. Can't really get the details. But what I will post as Mo True Crime is an interview that Herb did. It's a very kind of funny video to me. It's a very funny video to me because it is a local news station that's interviewing him about some road workers basically repainting the lines on the road. Oh. And I guess outside of Fox Hollow Farm, his property, there was a dead raccoon, and they went to paint over the lines, and instead of removing the raccoon, they just ran the paint over the raccoon, and I guess it disturbed him.
That's
the way he even describes how they ran over the raccoon, I think is kind of telling, because he said they ran over his throat and face, and they didn't care. And he just happened to have a Polaroid camera on him at the time this happened, and he took a Polaroid.
So the raccoon was like walking across the road, and the line painters came and ran over. He was alive?
It was dead. It was roadkill.
Okay.
But they didn't move it.
They don't have a sweeper on that thing that kind of sweeps in front of the paint? No, nothing.
I mean, you've seen memes and stuff of animals being painted over or things being painted over. I mean, yeah, I think they usually do a street sweeper first and then they paint it, but apparently not this is in Indianapolis, so outside of Indianapolis, so maybe Indiana doesn't do that. That is kind of the only footage of Herb. If you watch the investigative reports documentary, there is a videotape, like a homemade movie of him. They ask him what he wanted for Christmas, and what do you think a serial killer would say they wanted for Christmas to his family, who is leading a double life with.
I don't know. I gotta think.
Think. What is the most cliche thing for someone to say? What do you want for Christmas? What's the most cliche thing you could ever think of? He says world peace. I mean, isn't that the most cliche thing you could ever say? And he's a freaking serial killer. Oh. Yeah, and he goes, but I guess since I can't have that, he wants green and red M&Ms or something like that. Like, even more lame. But that is on the...
It's not lame. People like that stuff.
I know, but I mean, really, come on.
Do you think that these serial killers are like some kind of intellectual breed that's landed from another world?
Oh, absolutely not.
So they're just like everybody else. They just kind of flip, and it doesn't bother them if they kill people or they have a need to kill people or something like that, right?
I guess. I mean, he was able to live two very independent lives for a very long time. But I do want to say, just like so many we have covered, I think there were the signs. I think there's signs that, this person might be a little off. And I'm not talking about being, people want to say, oh, he's eccentric. I'm not talking about being eccentric. I'm talking like dark things and odd behavior that is not just eccentric. It's like kind of a step beyond that. Maybe 50 steps beyond that. But we'll get to that. So let's get into his background a little bit. Herb was born in Indianapolis, Indiana. He was the oldest of 4 children. His parents were Dr. Herbert and Elizabeth Baumeister. Herb had what was described as a normal childhood. In adolescence, Herb started exhibiting antisocial behavior. He was playing with dead animals, and he urinated on a teacher's desk. Which is funny because we just watched that YouTube.
That's not really antisocial.
But we just watched that YouTube video of the 3 brothers. And I don't know if you guys have seen this, but there's a YouTube video right now kind of making the rounds of 3 brothers kind of like in a living room. And one is on the couch and the other one just starts pissing on him.
Does that make him a serial killer or something? No, right?
I mean, that's
not antisocial. That's very social.
I'm not saying he'll be a serial killer, but I mean, if that's how you get your brothers back, that's kind of messed up. He is a little boy. He's very small, probably like, 4 or 5 years old. Anyway, at age 14, Herb started attending high school at North Central High, and he was active in biology, geology, government, international relations, and chess clubs. A friend remembers that Herb used to, quote, ponder what it would be like to taste human urine. While in high school, he found a dead crow in the road and put it in his pocket and placed it on his teacher's desk when she wasn't looking. It was in high school that his father secretly took him to take psychological tests, and records show that he was diagnosed with schizophrenia with possibly more than one personality. He received no treatment after this diagnosis. Herb was a loner in high school and he never dated. In 1965, at age 18, he graduated from high school and was accepted into Indiana University. He met his wife Julie there, and they were drawn to each other due to their strong conservative views. However, Herb only attended college for, now I've seen numerous accounts say 1 semester, but I've also seen other sources say 1 year. So I'm unclear if it was 1 semester or 1 year, but he did drop out. And during this time, he started working at the Indianapolis Star as a copy boy. He co-owned a secondhand hearse with a friend that worked there as well. And people described him at the time, co-workers described him as eccentric. In 1967, at age 20, he returned to college and majored in anatomy and wanted to be a doctor like his father. Julie was a sophomore in Indiana University when they did meet, and she remembers the football team won the right to go to the Rose Bowl. And in the preparations of that, she met Herb. Her first impression was that he was fun to be with. She enjoyed herself being with him. Herb and Julie, now this is during the 60s, but they didn't do drugs. They weren't in that whole hippie movement. She said they would just drive around, get a soda, and have a good time. In November of 1971, after Julie graduated from college, Herb married Julie at United Methodist Church in Indianapolis. In 1972, at 24 years old, Herb attended a semester at Butler University. Herb also spent 2 months in a psychiatric hospital after being married for only 6 months. And at that time, he was diagnosed with compulsive personality disorder. I don't think that's in the DSM anymore. I could be wrong on that, but I don't think it is. And it was his father that had him committed.
His father did have him committed?
Yeah. So when he went to the psychiatric hospital, there is an article, I think in People magazine, that Julie had done after this all happened. And in that article, all the articles I've read, and then her interviews on investigative reports, documentary, she actually has conflicting stories of things. To me, I think we can get into it later, but I think she has a lot of guilt. And I think to make herself look better, or maybe even to feel better, I think she does have some conflicting stories. So according to her in one of the articles, it was before they got married, but she was aware that he had went to the hospital. But in this People article, it basically says they were only married a couple of months when he was committed. So unclear of which is the truth.
And his dad committed.
But his dad is the one that committed him, yes. So from 1974 to 1985, Herb worked for the Department of Motor Vehicles. So this is the guy you would see at the DMV. He did have a strong work ethic, but he also displayed bizarre behavior, according to coworkers. He would send Christmas cards with him and another man dressed in drag. He earned the title of program director. And one day he decided he was going to urinate on a letter addressed to the governor, and he was terminated.
I see a pattern here.
Right? I mean, that's 3 times now that we're aware of, right?
Wait, 3 times he urinated? One on the teacher's desk, at the DMV or whatever, right? What was the third one?
He did it on the teacher's desk.
Yeah.
Oh, he told his friend he wondered what urine would taste like.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, but he probably did it more. I mean, it sounds like obviously a pastime of his. So he was terminated, and I guess from then on, I mean, he had this job for 11 years, and then he kind of started job hopping. He did have a strong work ethic, but displayed the bizarre behavior, and he sent the Christmas cards, and then he urinated. In 1979, his first child, Marie, was born.
How long had they been married at this time? 74, 75?
They got married in 71.
71. So she'd been with him for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
So let me ask you something. Would you have kids with a crazy person?
No.
So do you think she's kind of crazy?
I'm not sure if at this point she knows the depth of his craziness. I really don't. I mean, I think he was good. For like
8
years.
8 years.
But I think he was really good at having two kind of personalities. One was like deviant, one was husband, soon to be father, has a job, has his stuff together, and then there's another one that's just, dark side.
Do you think he hid it? I mean, this is the schizophrenia thing, right? You got this other personality, just kind of keep it on the side.
I think so. So in 1979, his first child, Marie, was born. And in 1981, their second child and first son, Eric, was born. In 1984, their third child, Emily, was born. Julie claims that she only had sex with Herb 6 times in their entire marriage. So at the time when all of this happened, they had been married like 25 years, actually a little bit more than 25 years. And in that 25 years, she said they had sex 6 times.
Gosh. And he was okay with that?
I don't have the details on that, and she didn't really elaborate. Yeah, I don't know how any marriage is working.
Was it her choice? Was that her choice, you think? Or she couldn't stand him?
Like I said, she didn't elaborate.
I know, but what brought that up? I mean, I only had
so they
sex
have
with him 6
3
times.
kids, but she does admit that. She does not elaborate. I don't think even probably the interviewer was even probably like able to come up with a question after you hear something like that. I mean, that's really bizarre to me. Really bizarre.
I'd be asking more questions. What do you mean?
I would too, but even when I heard her say it, or it was something I don't know if that's something she says or if that's in that article, even I was kind of like, wait, what? After the children were born, Julie said that Herb was very involved.
In what? Not in making kids, obviously.
No, involved in raising their kids. Oh. He was a very devoted, involved father. He wasn't an absent father. In 1985, the body of Eric Rotiger, he was a white male, 17 years old, was found. Herb at this time was 38 years old. On September 3rd, 1985, while drinking and driving, Herb committed a hit and run. On March 27th, 1986, so we're talking like September to March, a warrant was filed for his arrest, and he was charged with auto theft and conspiracy to commit theft.
Okay, hold on. So Eric, was that the hit and run, or is this a different time?
That's the first. Eric is the first body that's found.
Okay, but how is that linked to her?
I'm just reading. It's not linked at this point. I'm just reading you off facts.
But it could have been related to the hit and run. Oh, okay. All right.
The body's found, and then later that year. Okay, let me start over. Later that year, on September 3rd, 1985, while drinking and driving, Herb committed a hit and run.
But he didn't kill him or something?
No, he didn't kill anybody. This was like a traffic accident.
Was he charged? Did he get charged for that? It was drinking, right? So
yeah. So on
back then, it's like a little more lenient, wasn't it?
Yeah, because in March of the following year, so March 27th, 1986, a warrant was filed for his arrest, and he was charged with auto theft and conspiracy to commit theft. What? I don't know how they came up with these charges.
This is different, though. I mean, this is something else
And yeah, it's unclear if this is related to the hit and run, but I have to assume that it is because it says auto theft. You know how sometimes it's clear what someone did, but the charges are like, perfect example is Tara Grinstead.
Oh, yeah. I know who the guy. Yeah, absolutely.
The guy that's charged with her murder, he has all these wacky charges of like burglary and all these other things that aren't really cut and dry of like murder,
Yeah.
So they throw in all these other charges, and I know why they do that. I mean, it's obvious, but I'm wondering if that's kind of what happened here. Herb beat the conspiracy charge after a 1-day bench trial.
Okay, conspiracy for what?
Conspiracy to commit theft.
Oh, okay.
He was charged with auto theft and conspiracy to commit theft. Okay. So he beat the conspiracy charge after a 1-day bench trial, and I believe he got... It's not in my notes. I think he got like a year probation as well.
So this guy's starting to fall apart. It sounds like, or something. Something's triggered.
Yeah, we're in 1986, so yeah, he might be falling apart. His dad also dies in 1986. He's now 40 years old. In 1988, at 42 years old, Herb borrows. Now, I've seen varying accounts. I've seen $4,000. I've seen $350,000. However much money he borrows money from his mother to open up this store called Save-A-Lot, which is not the Save-A-Lot that's around today.
That's where that was coming from.
I know. It's not the discounted grocery stores that are around today. This was a thrift store, so kind of like a Goodwill.
Who else had one? There's no serial killers into this thrift store. The one in Kansas City we went to, right? He had a kind of odd something. What's the store?
Oh, Bob's Bizarre Bazaar.
Yeah.
Flea market. Yeah. So he borrows money from his mom. Again, I don't know if it was $4,000 or other reports say $350,000.
That's kind of a big difference,
right? That's what I thought. From his mom, and opened Save-A-Lot thrift store, not to be confused with the grocery stores.
All right, so hold on. In 1980 something, that's a lot of money. You don't need that much money to open a thrift store. That doesn't make sense.
That's why I think the $4,000 is more believable.
Yeah, because you've seen like some rent, and people probably give him crap.
And what gave him the idea is, after his DMV job, he started job hopping. And one of the places he was working at was a thrift store. And I guess he thought, I could do this. Why couldn't I do this? And then borrowed the money and opened the store. I don't know how long Julie was working, but I know that Julie was working as an English teacher. I don't know if she did that up until her kids were born and then she stayed home, or after the kids were born, she went back to work. A little unclear on that, but at some point she was no longer a teacher and was working at the store with Herb, because eventually they get 3 stores.
Oh yeah, they started to get kind of successful, huh?
Yeah. That brings us to, besides the body found in 1985, which they have tied back to him in some, or suspect that he had something to do with it. That's pretty much the history of up until his adulthood, and now we're going to start finding bodies. On August 12th, 1989, the body of Stephen Elliott, he was a white male that was 26, is found. In 1990, after making $50,000 in the first year of owning a Save-A-Lot, he opened a second store.
That's pretty good.
So, yeah, in 1990.
Yeah, but I mean those thrift stores, you know? I mean,
you gotta push a lot through to make some money.
Yeah, like clothes are like 25 cents or something like that. Books, nickel.
In the 90s, thrift stores were the best. I mean, that was the best. You could go to Goodwill and you could get things for 25 cents. You can't, it's not like that anymore. I mean, you go to a Goodwill store and they're selling, crap that Target couldn't sell for the same price. It's like, what? What did I just walk into? I thought it was Goodwill. But back then, yeah, it was awesome.
Did they have Goodwill back then?
Yeah.
I mean, the Salvation Army, right?
It was more so Salvation Army, yeah, but Goodwill was around. I think it was more. They didn't have all the stores, So he made, his first year opening, he made $50,000, so they opened another one. On August 11th, 1990, the body of Clay Boatman, he was a white male, 32, is found. In February of 91, Herb moved out and they filed for divorce, but soon reconciled. They don't really explain what's going on in 91, but I guess things get a little shaky. In November of 91, when Herb was 44 years old, Herb moved his family to Fox Hollow Farm in Westfield District. Now, I don't know a whole lot about Indianapolis, but apparently this area was a more affluent area. It was large plots of land, beautiful homes, not really country, but not in the city. I think it was, I want to say 20 miles from the city, and they buy this house at Fox Hollow Farm. In May of 93, Michael Riley disappears. He is a white male, 22 years old. On May 28th, 1993, Johnny L. Baer, white male, 20, is reported missing. He was last seen going to work at McDonald's. In August of 1993, Jeffrey Jones, white male, 31, is reported missing. Last seen coming out of a Salvation Army rehab center. Also in August of 93, Richard Hamilton, white male, 20, is reported missing. Last seen leaving his apartment at 2 a.m. to get cigarettes. So there's 2 in August of 93. On August 6th, in 1993, Alan Livingston, white male, 27, is reported missing. Last seen getting into a white vehicle.
All right, so we have...
So it really amps up in 93. Yeah, 93 is when it starts really getting kind of crazy. On August 7th, 1993, Manuel Resendez, he was a Mexican male, 31, went to a gay nightclub with friends, and when they were ready to leave that night, they couldn't find him.
Okay, so you're telling me, you started listing all these people that are missing, right? And they're all males. Is there something that you're going to allude to here in a minute that, like, he's a homosexual? Is that what we're getting at?
Yes.
Okay. This is like a common theme also, right? These
I
people
just
have
want to
bizarre
let anyone
stories,
know.
and they're like all homosexuals.
I know there is. So I just want to let anyone know that's listening that I do not prep my partner here with the story. He's hearing it for the first time because he, we've said, he hates true crime. So he's hearing it for the first time. So it's kind of like if someone just fell on the earth and you have to catch him up on everything. I'm catching him up on true crime.
Well, are there any ones that don't discriminate? Like they kill men and women,
yes,
and white and black and
yes.
yellow. They kill them all.
I can't say that we've covered any yet, but
are they
yes.
really out there?
Yes, they are.
I want some diversity. Can you get some diversity on your program?
The Golden State Killer. He didn't care. He just killed people, kids, adults, women, men.
All right, because he's getting kind of like white bread. It's kind of getting boring. We need some variety, and we need some diversity. We need to move out of the Midwest. We need to travel a little further in the Midwest.
Well, maybe our next one will be international. How about that? In April or possibly July, this is another one that's a little hazy of when it actually happened, but in April or July of 1994, Stephen Hale, white male, 26, is reported missing. He disappeared outside of Indianapolis Central Library, which was a known gay cruising area. At this point, he is
the library? Mm-hmm. The library was a known gay cruising area? Why? What's attractive about library to gay men?
It's just that area, I guess. This is 1994, remember. I mean, I don't think many people liked the library then. This is before the internet. Now everybody thinks the library's cool because you can get internet, but 94, I don't think there was a lot of people going to libraries that were just normal people.
Why didn't he go to gay clubs?
He did cruise gay clubs. That's how he picked all these people up. We're getting to it. Stephen Hale is the 8th missing man in the gay community at this point. On June 6, 1994, Alan Broussard, white male 28, is last seen leaving a gay bar, and he was a regular there, and he goes missing. On July 22nd, 1994, Roger Allen Goodlett, white male 34, disappears. He was hanging out with his mom, left to go out, never came home. His mom reported him missing the very next day. His mother, Catherine, hired a private investigator. So she's on this documentary as well. And she felt like when she reported him missing that nothing was going to happen because apparently in Indiana at that time, they had a mandatory 30-day waiting period on missing persons before they would do anything. And this is probably just adults, so I'm sure kids, it wasn't the same thing. But for missing adults, they had a 30-day waiting period. She knew that something was not right, she knew her son, so she hired a private investigator. And the private investigator found out that he was last seen getting into a car as he was hitchhiking to get home, and he was at a gay club. So also in 1994, the Baumeister's business, Save-A-Lot, was not doing well. So it starts to go bad for them.
Wonder why.
And there were problems between Julie and Herb started treating his employees very badly. They said that he would treat them like they were beneath him. Employees reported that he would leave the store and return with alcohol on his breath. Herb was arrested for drinking and driving in Rochester, Indiana, and was sentenced to 3 days in jail and 1 year probation. So during the summers, Julie would take the three children to Wawasee Lake, to a lakeside condo 100 miles to the north that was owned by Herb's mother, Elizabeth. Herb would stay at Fox Hollow Farm during the work week, where he would cruise gay bars and join his family on the weekends.
You don't think she knew? I think she's probably one of those women that just stuck with it, huh?
I mean, we're going to get to that because I do talk about it later, but I'm really conflicted because if you watch her interview, she kind of lacks emotion. But when the cops describe her, or when she describes herself, kind of like in third person, she talks about all these emotions. But when she's actually being interviewed for the camera, she's very matter of fact and lacking any kind of emotion about the whole thing. And she's just casually talking about these things. And I feel like she
being
almost...
that her husband's gay?
That her husband, is suspected of killing all these people.
But does she realize that he's gay?
I don't think
Chase,
she...
Did he have intercourse with these guys?
Well, I mean, they only find bones, so they don't know. Yes, I think so. I mean,
did he have gay tendencies, or was he just killing homosexuals?
Well, they've described him as...
Because he said he was conservative, right?
We'll get to when the detective actually goes to talk to him, but they describe him as effeminate,
him
awkward.
As feminine?
Yeah, awkward. I guess
so was
he was
targeting
apparently...
him, or what? Was he?
We're getting to it. So the media at this time is basically saying nothing. They're silent about all these missing men, but in the clubs, everybody knew there was some creepy guy that was killing these men.
Okay, if they knew And you're a gay man. Would you go hitchhiking?
So...
Would you? That's what one of the guys did.
So listen.
Why would you go hitchhiking?
So the media at the time was silent, but in Indianapolis, they had 3 gay newspapers at the time, and they would run the stories of the missing men, and they put up flyers in the clubs and everywhere, downtown.
And when they say, don't hitchhike.
I mean, yeah. After 8 missing men and no leads, the police turned to the FBI Behavioral Sciences Unit for help. And they profiled the killer as a white male, mid-40s, probably bisexual, and above average IQ. I don't think that could be any more vague. But that did, he is all those things, but, really, that probably described how many men at that time.
Well, above average IQ, you'd probably eliminate 90-some%, wouldn't you?
Okay, maybe. In August of 1994, Mark Goodyear, who was a friend of Roger Allen Goodlet's. Now, Roger Allen Goodlet, remember, his mom is the one that hired the private investigator. So this private investigator is tracking people down that knew him and that was at the club or, whatever. So a friend of his name is Mark Goodyear. You can see him on this documentary. He had met a guy that he described as a weirdo at a gay bar. He said his name was Brian Smart. His alias was Brian Smart. Mark had noticed this guy before at these clubs, and he said he was always alone, he kept to himself, and he looked like he wasn't comfortable. Mark went up to him when he was reading a missing person poster, which was for Goodlet, and started talking to him. This person said he was concerned, but Mark didn't think it was genuine. So he was trying to say, I'm really worried about these men being missing, but he said it wasn't genuine. He felt like this guy knew something. And within 15 minutes, he's in this guy's car. And I'm watching this and I'm like, wait, what? How did it go from, I think this guy might be the guy, but I'm going to get in his car.
Yeah, and he's weird and awkward or something. He's by himself. That's the guy I'm going to go hang out
with. I know, this
in the car.
Really didn't make sense to me, but I don't know.
Well, he must have got away.
He said he was taking him to his employer's home in Hamilton County. He actually took him to Fox Hollow Farm. He said the house was dusty and that there were mannequins everywhere. And this is something the police describe as well, that there's mannequins all over the house. And in the pool, by the pool, there's all these mannequins everywhere posed. And so
and
he
his
thought
wife
that was...
didn't think this was freaking weird?
Well, I'm not sure those things were out when she was home. You have to remember, she's gone for the summer. She's not coming back the whole summer. So he's doing whatever he wants. And I'm thinking he brings that stuff out when she's not there.
So why did she go? Why did she go for the whole summer? What reason?
I guess just to...
Because you get away from the weirdo?
Yeah.
And his mannequins?
Yeah. So I guess this Mark was like...
Not this Mark. That Mark.
Yeah. I guess he said something like, what's up with all these mannequins? And he said the owner didn't want to be alone.
So at this time, he hasn't told him this is his house.
No, he's saying this is my employer's home. Yeah, he's saying it's not his. So Mark got in the pool, and if you don't know anything about Fox Hollow Farm, there's tons of videos online about it. You can see the inside. This is an indoor, in-ground pool in the house. It's not the basement, but I guess it's close to the basement. So this is where they are. Mark was in the pool, and this man started telling him what he was into, and then put a hose, like a pool hose, around his neck. He said it was not an attack. He wanted to know if he was into it and asked him to strangle him or hold his throat, and he fell unconscious. So he wanted to be strangled, basically. Herb did. And he wanted this guy to strangle him, but like the whole, what's it called?
Who's
Erotic
in the pool? Mark's in the
asphyxiation.
pool.
Yeah, and Herb is too.
Oh, they're both in there.
Yeah.
And then Herb takes the hose and puts it around Mark. Hey, how do you like this?
Mm-hmm.
You like this? You want to be strangled to death?
Pretty much.
Like this?
And so...
And Mark was like, oh, yeah.
So, I mean, I don't think he was really forthcoming in the interview, but basically, I think he was allowing him to...
Have his way with him?
Yeah, kind of. But he did it to Herb. And he actually went unconscious. And
Herb did.
Yeah, and fell into the water. And then when he came to, he told him how much of a rush it was, that it's sexual asphyxiation. And then he wanted to then choke Mark.
Wait, he was having sex with him and did this? Or is it just the asphyxiation and it's a sexual arousement?
Yes. He wanted to then choke Mark, and he said it could bring ecstasy. Herb told him what turned him on, and that he liked seeing, now this is a quote, and this is gross, the eyes bulge out of the head, the lips swell up and sometimes crack, the discoloration in the skin, and he spoke like he was in some sort of ecstasy or rapture. Mark told him he knew he was hurting people and that he'd go to the police. Herb laughed in his face. He said no one would believe someone like him. At that point, he got in touch with he left and, was fine. He lived through it. And then he got in touch with a private investigator. This is kind of like the break in all of these missing men. This is kind of like the break. So he contacts the police, contacts a private investigator. The police try to take him back to the house. He gave him a fake name. He wasn't exactly sure where he was at. All he could remember was seeing a sign that said something farm. They drove around and he was terrified to do this. He didn't want to go back in that area, but the police assured him he would be safe, and they tried to find it. They couldn't find it. They couldn't find the estate. They couldn't find him. It was kind of a dead end. And Mark also said this man, who he knew as Brian Smart, insinuated that he had killed between 50 to 60 people.
So this guy admitted to Mark.
He said he insinuated. He never admitted it. He insinuated. So apparently, after this happened, Herb continued to call Mark and wanted to see him, wanted to, basically repeat what happened before.
So why didn't he set it up with the police and everything?
So he told him he was familiar with death, that there were accidents or mishaps or bad nights. So the police, I know this is where I'm like, okay. The police try to trace the calls, and they can't because he's calling from a cell phone.
Wait,
so
cell phone?
Why?
Oh, in the 90s?
It's 94.
Yeah.
That's the first year I got a cell phone. Big old honking Motorola flip phone that my first bill was like $900 and I got grounded. Yeah. Why wouldn't they set up a meeting?
I don't know. That's what I'm thinking.
And I'm thinking from a police standpoint, at this point,
maybe
they're not connecting these missing men to him, because they're just hearing this guy say, hey, this dude tried to choke me. He wanted me to choke him. It could just look like some deviant sex stuff going on between two dudes.
But did the police know that these people missing, or the bodies that they found, were gay men?
Yeah, they knew that they were gay.
Okay, well, there's probably not a huge community of gay people. So this guy comes and says, hey, I'm gay.
I'm not entirely sure they made the connection, and so I don't think that's why they didn't make more of an effort. But I'm thinking in my head, why didn't they set up something for him to meet up with him, to at least get a name, a real name, at least try and maybe watch him or see what he was up to.
Yeah.
But they didn't. So the FBI profiler at this point is saying the killing was not intentional.
Which killing?
Him killing these men was not intentional. That it was a process. And at some point, he was into this erotic... Is it autoerotic when it's more than one person? I'm not sure.
Multi-erotic.
Asphyxiation, whatever it's called. At some point when he was doing that with a man, someone died. And now anything less than that is no longer exciting for him. So there was an escalation. And by 1995, 10 missing men meant there was a serial killer, and they only went missing in the summer.
Why'd Mark survive? Why'd Mark make it out? Why didn't he kill him?
Well, I think because he was complacent and was agreeable, and there wasn't an accident. Because I think what he was trying to tell him was, there's been bad nights, there's been mishaps.
Yeah, but it's not the first time that somebody must have survived. He didn't kill everyone.
No, that's not entirely true. There could be people that survived and just never left the area, or just never knew that.
Oh, they were too embarrassed. They're probably married men and crap.
Right. I mean, I don't think every single person, it's like most serial killers, why didn't they kill their wives? Or why didn't they kill this one? Or why didn't they, because people come out of the woodwork afterwards like, oh, I was with this dude or whatever. I mean, they don't know that they're a survivor at that point. They have no idea.
Yeah, but this guy he's telling them a lot of creepy, crazy crap.
I know, I just don't understand why the cops didn't.
Luscious lips.
But then I'm thinking, well, why did this guy go with him after, I don't know. Maybe I just don't have all the details. I mean, I know how things are edited and you don't get all the information. So in the early part of 1995, Herb's 13-year-old son, Eric, finds a skull in the woods behind Fox Hollow Farm. He went to get his mom to show her, and she said it looked like somebody had just laid down and died. It was an entire, a whole skeleton. So what does Julie do?
Anything.
No.
Just...
So what does Julie do? What would you do if you found a skeleton in
Julie's
your backyard?
I'm going to go for a month or a couple months. Might head out, see.
But, I mean, if it were you, what would you do? If you went in your backyard and found an entire skeleton, what would you do?
Oh, I say, Herb, do you know about this? You need to stop doing this. We're all going to get busted here.
Okay, well, I know what I would do, and that would be call the police.
Well,
okay?
you'd probably ask your husband first.
Oh,
You
yeah.
probably would.
Hey, do you know anything about this dead body in the backyard? And he says...
You would. That's what
he
you'd
actually
see.
says...
You wouldn't go and call the police right away. If, your husband's like in the house or something. You see the dead body. You haven't really put it together because you're still sticking around like a dum-dum. And all these mannequins are in the house and all that kind of stuff, So what are you gonna
that
do?
is
You're
what
gonna
Julie
ask
does.
first.
She waits for Herb to get home.
Yeah.
She takes him out
We have
there.
a family meeting.
And she's like, yo, dude, you know anything about this? And he's like, oh, heck yeah, I do. That's the skeleton that I used to have in the garage. That was my dad's. Because he was a doctor. And, they had this...
Is that what he says?
This is exactly what he says. I'm not making this up.
Oh.
He had the skeleton, the teaching models.
I remember seeing those as a kid in doctor's offices and crap. Yeah.
Not all the
They
time.
might have
but,
been Herb's.
No, well, not
He
all
might
the
have
time,
supplied
but...
them. His dad
some
said,
of them...
I need some skeletons for our freaking other doctor friends.
So
You
some of
got
them
some?
were actually real people that, had donated their body to science.
What other is there?
Well, not all of them were real. I mean, I think people got kind of unnerved by that at some point in life and were like, you need to get fake plastic ones. They're much prettier to look at.
The dollar
Because
store.
that's like weird. That's so-and-so and now they're hanging and we're pointing to them and it's just weird. Yeah, so he tells her, hey, that was my dad's. Remember that's the one I had in the garage. And apparently he was like they say pack rat, but it sounds like he was a hoarder. And the garage was packed full of stuff. And they knew that he had it from his dad. So he just said, out of all the crap that was in the garage, that's the thing he decided to get rid of. And she believed him. And he said,
of course she did.
I'll get it cleaned up in a week. So they go back out in a week and it's gone. And what does she do? She forgets about it. Like, whatevs. And
So how does he get rid of it? Puts it in the trash? In a trash bag? Big black trash bag?
Well, we'll get to that. But at some point...
Dang, you keep saying we're going to get to something.
Well...
I'm much further into discovery than you are.
I think he, at some point, attempts to bury them. Like, kind of early on when he has the actual property, he starts to bury them. Mm. And then when that's found, he thinks, oh, I should probably do more than that. So he starts burning them. And there was they found a burn pile with bone fragments. So
that's what Western natives did up in Wisconsin there.
Yeah, so at some point he tries to burn them.
Don't people understand? Bones don't really burn.
Right. And then I did watch a video of that has the current owner, and he said that they found a lot of bleach bottles and Vicks Vapor Rub. So he kind of surmised from what the police told him is that he would go out, pour bleach on the remains, hoping that would, I guess, eat him away. I mean, he was kind of dumb.
Doesn't acid do it?
Yeah, so he was kind of...
Well, you say he's above average IQ and stuff like that.
I don't say that. That's what they say. I'm just saying maybe he wasn't as smart as they all thought. And the Vicks Vapor Rub they thought was to put under his nose because the smell was so bad. So Julie believes him and it's forgotten about. That was pretty much it. Then on April 1st, 1995, Michael Cairn, white male, 46, was reported missing when he didn't show up for work at a factory.
How old?
46.
He's getting older.
I think that was the older. I think he was kind of an opportunist. As long as they were male, because the ages are there are a lot that are young, but there's also some that, in their 30s. August 1995, Jerry Williams Comer, white male, 35, disappeared. His car was recovered at an Indianapolis shopping mall. He's the 10th gay man missing in 3 years. Now, I just want to preface this whole entire podcast with, again, reiterating that there's so little about victims in these situations. And even though it's reported that all these men were gay, I do not know for a fact that these men were gay. I have no idea. So I don't want to offend anyone or hurt anyone's feelings if they aren't, because I really don't know. So some of these men could have just been
gay,
and some could just be heterosexual. I don't think it matters.
That we're exploring?
No, I'm just saying I don't know for a fact that these men were gay, and that's what's been reported. And I hate repeating something like that because I think the victims are always lost. August 29th, 1995, Mark finally spots the guy again and had a friend follow him outside to get his license plate number. He gave the license plate number to the police and the car was registered to Herbert Baumeister. After 3 months of background checks, a detective went to the Save-A-Lot store where he was working that day. And the detective's first impression of Herb was that he was strange, very tall, his hair was colored, looked effeminate, and was nervous. Herb denied being at any gay bars, but then said his family didn't know that he had went to gay bars. He kind of admitted that he would go, but that his family didn't know. They asked to search the property at this time, and he refused. In November of 95, they approached Julie. They told Julie they were investigating Herb
How'd they describe her when they saw her? I mean, clearly there's something going on with her.
I know, right? The detective did not describe her. So they told Julie they were investigating Herb for homosexual homicide. She did not know what that meant. And she said, I know what homicide is.
Of criminality called homosexual homicide.
I mean, I think it's kind of odd wording as well. I mean, a homicide's a homicide.
That seems discriminatory.
It does. She didn't know what that meant, so she, in
because
the interview,
when a normal
says,
person kills a freaking person, they don't say it's heterosexual homicide.
Right. I mean, I think it's definitely odd.
Maybe I shouldn't say normal person. When a person kills the opposite sex, they don't say it's heterosexual.
Right. They don't. I did think it's odd too. So Julie did not know what that meant, and she said in the interview, that's on the investigative reports, I knew what homicide was, and I knew what homosexual was, but I didn't know what homosexual homicide was. And she said she just wanted them to leave because she just wanted to cry. And they left, and she cried. So over the next few weeks, she said she doesn't believe that Herb would do this. She said he's not violent, he has no temper, he's never hurt her or the kids or even raised his voice. So she decides that she's also going to refuse them on the property. And she told him to get a search warrant. So police at this point only had circumstantial evidence, so they conducted a search from the air. And unfortunately, they found nothing. They couldn't see any hot spots or anything from bodies. So that was pointless.
They had the technology then to see that? Like
This is 1995, so they just took a helicopter up and they have the what's it called? It's where they can see the heat. What's that called?
Thermal.
Yeah, thermal, whatever. They did have that at that point, yeah. And they couldn't find anything. So at this point, their marriage is completely breaking down. The businesses were failing and they were on the brink of foreclosure at Fox Hollow Farm. Their entire life is collapsing. So that Christmas, Julie and Herb spent the holidays apart. And Herb tells his attorney he's going to kill himself. In January of that next year, so January of 96, Julie files for divorce. She also mentions to her attorney that, her son had found that skull in the backyard. And in June of 96, so I don't know why all of this time is passing, nothing's being done. So in June, 6 months later, Herb was becoming very erratic and impulsively closed his stores and took their only son on vacation to that lake, Wawasee. Herb is deeply troubled at this point. He wipes out their bank accounts, and Julie's attorney convinces her to tell the police about the bones. Because up to this point, she's telling the cops that she doesn't believe he would do this. She wouldn't let them search the property. She's basically uncooperative. Her attorney convinces her, hey, you need to tell the cops about this, which she does. And she said it looked like someone had laid down and died. Julie then allows the police to search the property where the skeleton was found. Immediately, I guess there's numerous cops. They start finding bones at their feet, and they found one of the officers found teeth. Others found bones. They found bone fragments. So then they bring in this whole team and do an extensive search for bones, and then they confirm that they are human. Some of the bones were burned, but police they found bone fragments, and they did find complete bones. And they found around 5,000 bone fragments, and they were able to determine that they had at least 7 different bodies because they found the same, I think it was the right thumb. So they found 7 right thumbs, which was, helped them determine that there's 7 people here. But of those 7 bodies, only 4 at that point were identified. So the men identified were Roger Goodlett. His mom is the one that hired the PI. Stephen Hale, Manuel Resendez, and Richard Hamilton. So police at this point, this is where I get super angry about this case. So police drive to the Lakeside condo. And remember, this is 100 miles away. They take custody of Herb and Julie's son. Herb is there, but they let him go. Why? So that's exactly what the detective says that's been working on this case. And it's some jurisdiction crap that's going on. Because it was in Hamilton County, blah, 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 blah. So basically, the county was I believe it was the county that was in charge of the investigation. And they decided that they had no idea what they had here. They didn't know the extent of it. And they weren't ready to arrest him for anything at this point. Which I think is crap.
I can see that. I mean, because you got bones on your property. It could be Indian bones.
This is the second day of the investigation. So, yeah, I mean, probably the second day they didn't have a good enough understanding of what they had. But they also should have known 10 men were just, missing. They had Mark, the guy that pretty much led them there, but not entirely, but knew it was something farm on the sign. The same area.
There's a lot of farms.
I know, but come on. Not everybody names their property.
Hindsight is 20/20.
I just feel like they messed up. Herb knows he's going to be arrested. He takes off to Canada. He's like, bye. And on July 3rd, 1996, Herb was found in his car in a park in Canada, and he was dead. He left a note, apparently it was this 3-page rambling note about his failing marriage and failing businesses, and never mentioned anything about the men in his backyard. And the last part of the note said, I'm going to eat a peanut butter sandwich and go to sleep. He shot himself in the forehead with a .357 Magnum. The police investigation found that Herb had a relationship with 2 other men. They were alive and well, but it was an actual relationship that they had, and they were not into his fetishes. So it was more like an intimate, quote-unquote, normal relationship. It wasn't this deviant sexual relationship.
These 2 other men at the same time?
I don't think at the same time, no. The media described Herb as a business owner, a landowner, and further victimized the victims as people on the fringe of society. They were male prostitutes hanging out in these bad parts of town, and it really upset the victim's family. It also really upset the victim's family that Julie didn't go to the police when the bones were first found by Herb's son, because at least 2 men disappeared after Julie knew about the bones. And over time, the police said that the bones kept getting closer and closer to the back door, which showed that Herb had gained a confidence and had felt successful in basically doing this out in the wide open.
But they were buried, weren't they, or no? I mean, that one
I mean, it's hard to determine, but it kind of sounds like they weren't. And then an area that he buried them in was kind of like a creek bed or like a water, kind of like a drainage. But apparently he put them in an area that was dried up. And so even to this day, when the water is washed down, when it rains, there's still bones that are found. And there's a tree that these kind of things collect at. So the current owner finds bones there a lot. So I don't think he necessarily buried them. And if he did, it was very, on a shallow grave. That's also where the current owner, found the bleach bottles and the Vicks Vapor Rub bottles. So not only was not really burying them, they were getting closer and closer to the house. From 1980 to 1990, there were men disappearing and being found along I-70 in Ohio. And they had all been strangled. Now, if you remember at the beginning of this, he was called the I-70 killer.
Yeah.
Which I couldn't understand when I first started researching. And he's sometimes called the gay murderer. This is why he was called the I-70 killer. These men were suspected to be killed by him. This was before he had Fox Hollow. So 1991 is when he got Fox Hollow Farm. He didn't have a property before to put them in. So it would kind of make sense that he would just dump them wherever he could. He also made frequent trips to Ohio for business, according to Julie, during this time. She said in a year's time, he would make at least 100 trips from Indianapolis to Columbus, Ohio.
It's like twice a week.
Mm-hmm.
Why?
She said for business, for 10 years.
He had a thrift
from
shop.
1980 to 1990.
Right, he had a thrift shop. Do you have to buy his stuff?
He didn't have the thrift shop at that time.
Oh, that's right. He was working the Indiana Department of Transportation or something, right?
DMV.
Yes. Why do you have to go on there for business? It's Indiana's. It's not Ohio's.
Maybe I don't know.
Well, didn't she ask?
So the body stopped showing up for a year. So from 1990 to 91, they stopped showing up, which was the year that Herb moved to Fox Hollow Farm. So now that he had the property, he just disposed of the bodies there. After Herb's suicide, Julie moved out of Fox Hollow Farm and back to Indianapolis in the house that they had lived in, I guess, prior to moving to Fox Hollow Farm. And she filed for bankruptcy. They also determined that he had a video camera installed downstairs where it's assumed he recorded the encounters with the men. They aren't sure if it was the actual killing because they kind of suspect that happened in the pool. Maybe it didn't. They don't know.
Never found any tapes.
No.
Nothing.
But he was pulled over before he got to that park when he was in Canada. He was pulled over, and the cop remembered seeing videotapes in the back of his car, in the back seat. But when they found him in the car, there was no videotape. So he obviously dumped them somewhere,
Or burned them, maybe in that burn pile he had.
The remains of 11 men were found on the property at Fox Hollow Farm, and it's believed that Herb killed an additional 9 men that were found in the rural areas along I-70 between Indianapolis and Columbus, Ohio, during early to mid-'80s. Herb has never and had never confessed to any murders. The current owner of Fox Hollow Farm allows paranormal investigations and tours. He reports that he still finds bones on the property, and mediums and psychics say the majority of activity in the house is in the basement, the pool room, and the master bathroom. The bathroom, they have said, could possibly be a portal for spirits. You can find a ton of videos of these paranormal investigations, and a lot of them have the owner in the videos, and he is extremely knowledgeable about Herb and the entire incident and what he finds and things that happen. I'm not sure I could live in that house. He seems to have he seems to be okay with it. He also said in one of the videos that everyone that's ever owned a home has lost it in foreclosure. So he obviously hopes that doesn't happen to him.
How many people have owned it since Herb had it, or his wife?
I think a few, because he didn't buy it from them and it was foreclosed. So I'm not entirely sure.
Why'd she have to file bankruptcy? Because his debt doesn't pass on to her, does it?
Well, I think they co-owned the businesses together, and they went bad. The house was in foreclosure. I'm guessing they just had a lot of debt, and she couldn't deal. And she was working at the thrift stores, so I don't think she had a job outside of that. So it's kind of like she had to start over. I'm just really unsure if she had any idea. I don't know how you could not, especially after finding bones in the backyard. I mean, when you know something's off with someone, I don't think your initial reaction is, oh, they're a serial killer. But there's definitely red flags too. Somebody's up to something. And the fact that they didn't have sex, I mean, was she really that naive to think that's normal? Did she not have, I mean, they seemed somewhat antisocial. It said they had, they didn't have a lot of friends. They weren't very social in terms of, having intimate relationships with other people. So I don't know. Maybe she was that naive. I find it highly unlikely that she would be that, just turn a blind eye to it.
What would you do?
I would probably, in the first 5 seconds of meeting someone, know that they were wackadoodle.
Well, you think everybody's like that because you're in the true crime.
I think I would know if someone was, let's just say he wasn't a serial killer and he was just going out let's just say he was out having gay relationships. He was
cheating on his wife with a man?
Yeah, I mean, let's just say he was doing that. Does she really have no clue he's doing that?
Well, I think she would ask.
Did she never?
Why don't we have sex?
Right.
But, I mean, some women just aren't into it and they'll use it and stuff like that, Some women just aren't into it. I'm just saying.
But
and it's okay with them.
Do you honestly believe, though, in that how many years, not one time that she unexpectedly came home for some reason? Like, oh, I've got to do blah, 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 blah. And then shows up and he's like, down there with a dead body or something. I mean, that never happened.
That's a lot of bodies. Or the smell.
I think it would be, the smell. I think it would be really interesting to talk to his kids and what they remember, but I'm sure they want complete disconnection from this whole thing.
Same with Bordello, right? His kids or whatever.
He doesn't have kids.
Well, one of them had kids.
Lorenzo Gilliard, he had kids.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And had this other life, right? And he had kids. Mm-hmm. And then they find all this stuff out.
Well, I
mean, it's completely screw you up, right? Or just what the heck?
Well, I think that...
I mean, it's because it's knocks down everything that you believe.
Yeah.
Right, because here's your dad teaching you.
And I did see that.
And then you have all this whole other thing going on.
At the time, now this may have changed, but at the time it said, I think it was Julie that said her kids still think and want to think that their father was a good father, and they want to think of him as they knew him, not this whole other side. So I
think you almost have to keep your life sane. Right?
Yeah, I do too. But
do you think serial killers produce serial killers? Is there any correlation between that, you think?
I don't think so. I don't know of any record of that. I don't know of any serial killer that's had a child that's been a serial killer. I'm sure that'd be the craziest out there, thing, right?
But you think so?
It has to be. I mean,
it does? So what you're saying, you pass it down?
I'll have to look into that. I'm not sure. I don't think you can.
We should travel somewhere.
Whew, yeah, I might have to look into that. I mean, I know there's siblings and family members that have killed together.
Not killed, not just one. I mean not like the Menendez brothers or whatever. I'm talking about together brother and sister, brother and brother, they went out and killed like 20 people or whatever it is, 10 people.
I know. I'll have to look that up. But I do probably think that his kids just don't want to be associated with it whatsoever, and think that's probably the best way. I didn't even look them up because I don't think they want anything to do with this at all.
You don't have to look them up. I mean,
but I wish that people that are close to these types of people would, kind of share things, because it could be helpful. It could be very helpful for someone that's maybe struggling with
serial killer disease.
Yeah. I mean, there's 3,000 to 4,000 serial killers active right now. Them saying, yeah, my dad used to do this, and now in hindsight it was really weird.
Okay, yeah, so it's weird, but does that make you a serial killer?
No, that's what I said. I've said that all the time. Just because people think you're eccentric or a little off doesn't mean you're a serial killer. But if somebody actually knew what he was up to, I don't think anybody cared what he was doing. Like, he was cruising gay bars all the time. There was nobody watching what he was doing. His wife didn't give a crap. She was like, peace out. I'm going to go hang with my kids.
Well, she had been around for 6 times.
I mean, that right there is just weird. I just wonder, how do you justify that? Like, how do you have that conversation with someone? Herb, why don't we have sex? And he says... I think
that's pretty common.
And what does he say?
I think it goes the other way, though. It's like the guy's usually like, why don't we have sex? Why are you holding us back? Right? Usually the guy is the driven one, right?
I don't think so.
I think we should do a survey. True crime survey.
Hey, if you're watching this on YouTube, comment below. Maybe next time we will have an international case for you. Serial kids. And then we'll have found some really wacky serial killers that are related. I'm sure that they exist, and I might even know of a couple off the top of my head, but I can't remember. I can't keep everything straight. So thank you for listening.
Hey, let us know if you guys know some. Put them down in the comments below. We'll go research them for you and report back to you.
Yes. And thanks for listening. Please like us, share us with your friends, and check out the blog if you want to see some pictures of Herb and his family and of Fox Hollow Farm. You can also find them on YouTube. I will post a video of Herb being interviewed about the raccoon, which is very interesting. You can see him speak too. It kind of always helps me with the visual. But until next time, be good.
If you can't be good, don't get in trouble.
That's totally wrong. If you can't be good, be careful.
And if you can't be good, be careful.
Be good.
And if you can't be good, be careful.